Welcome everyone to our second online session for the Equitable Advancement of Computer Science Education. This is our second session of our Computational Thinking course, and we are very pleased to welcome our guest presenter today, Art Lopez. Art Lopez is a computer science teacher at Sweetwater High School in San Diego, and aside from teaching, Art was recently named a curriculum specialist for computer science at Sweetwater District, where he is tasked with creating curriculum and helping the schools in his district implement computer science classes. And for his innovations and achievements with implementing computer science classes, both at the high school and the district level, the White House's Office of Science and Technology Policy invited him to be part of a working group for Computer Science for All Education Initiative. And this was an initiative that was set forth by President Obama to really empower every student from kindergarten to high school to learn computer science. And what's exciting is on September 14th, Art and two of his recent graduates had the opportunity to speak at the White House Summit on Computer Science for All. So we are proud and pleased to have him joining us here today to really talk about his work, and as we expand our understanding of computer science and application of computational thinking, it's important to expand our conversation to people across the country who are doing similar work and really be able to learn from each other to advance what's happening in our own classrooms.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored and I'm very privileged to be here with you today, and I'd like to thank Sherry for inviting me, and I think you should be able to see the PowerPoint file that I'm going to be displaying to you. Sherry, will you keep me on track and just let me know, the timing of all this, and I'll make sure that I'll try to do it within the time frame we suggested. Is that okay?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, so everybody, I have been involved with implementing CS for All. As Sherry just said, two of my students, Carla Gonzalez and Adrian Alvarez, and I were very honored and privileged to be able to present on behalf of the White House. And we were selected because we are a large ethnically diverse community located right on the border of San Diego. We have about 42,000 students in our schools. As you can see by the graphic, we have 13 high schools, 11 middle schools, and we also have 77% Latino, 8% Filipino, 3% African American, 6% white, 6% other. 55% of our students are in free or reduced lunch programs, and we have 22% that are identified as English language learners. And we have some very unique challenges as we try to teach our kids and educate them. So the reason why we started with computer science is because 5 years ago, one of my kids came up to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Lopez, why does La Jolla High School and Torrey Pines High School have computer science programs and we don't?" And I said, "That's a really great question." And it really hit me, my then current principal, Dr. Romando Rosario Maribel Gavin, that it was an inequity access issue and that my kids were not getting the same opportunities as children of other communities that were being exposed to computer science. And I thought that's absolutely criminal, because I think that computer science is really important for publication in our kids' lives. So why did I get involved specifically? It's because I wanted to do two things. I was guided by both the National Science Foundation, the College Board, and also by my higher education partners from the University of California, San Diego, and the San Diego Supercomputer Center, that not only were we trying to get an introductory computer science course, which is really important for kids and whatever future endeavors they're going to pursue, because whatever they're going to do, it's going to require them to understand computing in some sense, and especially they pursue STEM degrees, is that it was also about equity, access, and broadening participation. And here you see some pictures of the audience that I am teaching in the area that I work in. So here's a graphic that the College Board has provided us. It's the diversity challenge. There's the percentage of computer science majors who were women. In 1985 was 37%. It's dropped down to 2012 to about 18%, but I think the recent numbers are showing there's an increase, which is really great. And then we also have the percentage of today's software workforces. Male, 80%, female, 20%, Asian 29%, Hispanic 5%, Black 4%. If you look at the Hispanic and Black communities and their populations, if we say that they're Hispanic female and Black female, the numbers go below 1%, and they're pretty abysmal. We are basically Xing out 70% of our overall population in being exposed to computer science. And that's something that drew the attention of both the National Science Foundation and the College Board, and they wanted to maybe offer opportunities for kids to take this. What's the other reasons why we want to do this? Well, out of the 9.2 million STEM jobs that'll be available by the year 2020, the computing will be dwarfing the market. 4.6 million jobs will be requiring computer science degrees. Inherently, if you look at all the other STEM fields, they're going to have to know computing and computational thinking because they're going to use them as tools in whatever the kids are going to be studying in those fields. They have to be able to design their own programs. So it behooves them to understand computer science. The other thing that I'd like to point out to people is that computer science majors can earn 40% more than the college average. I really like to expose my kids to the fact that, hey, you know what, there's a lot of money to be made in computing. I don't think it should be the only thing that's drawing you in it, but it certainly says a lot for you to be able to make a lot of money if you decide to become a computer scientist. So how did my district get here? Well, about in 2012, 2013, we had 0 computer science courses taught in 13 high schools, 11 middle schools, and 42,000 kids. I started a pilot program with 3 other instructors. We got to 4 the following year. We went to 7, and then I really got engaged. I really became a national advocate. I became a regional advocate. I really try to create professional learning communities, and I am really thrilled to tell you today that our district now has 42 computer science courses, 21 in the high schools and 21 in the middle schools. And we've embarked on a special program this year where my computer science students are now doing coding clubs as community service for 10 elementary schools. So I'm really starting to get engaged at all levels of public education with computer science. I'd also like to point out very clearly that it takes a village. You have to have partnerships in order to have success in these kinds of programs. So we've got relationships with the University of California, San Diego Supercomputer Center, the National Science Foundation, and the College Board. They provide us the training, the resources, and the curriculum, and also great ideas for how to teach computer science, but be really engaging so that kids want to try to take these types of courses. So we had 2 NSF-funded grants in which the professor of computer science, Dr. Beth Simon, was training us. There was a few of us that started this program 5 years ago, and I've become now a master teacher. And I have to tell you something, I do not have a computer science background. I have only taken 1 programming class in my life in 1979 when I was 18 years old. It was Fortran punch cards. It was not that exciting, but it's really changed and evolved. I will talk to you today, if you like, about recruitment and recruiting strategies. How do you get kids to take these kinds of courses? I've tried lots of different things. I've gone into the middle schools to recruit. I've gone to every single classroom in my campus to talk to kids about, hey, it's really fun. The whole premise that I put up on computer science is that it's really fun and enjoyable to learn, plus you are allowed to become very creative. And a lot of kids don't understand that you have to be extremely creative to think of great ideas with computing. Here are some great suggestions from the College Board about recruiting underrepresented students. Focus on the course being demographically representative of your school population. Maybe in your wherever you teach at, your audience may not be that diverse. That's okay. But if you have some diverse populations, at least try to make sure that they're represented in terms of the percentages in your course. Recruit clusters of students from groups that have been historically underrepresented in computing. I have really strived to engage young women to take my classes. When I first started this, I only had 7% young women take taking the computer science courses, I'm up to 35% in 4 years. The way I do it is I talk to the girls and I tell them, hey, please tell your friends, especially your girlfriends, that you know what, that you really like the class and you think it's really fun and you think that you're learning a lot. It's going to help you on your future. And they've been the ones that have been really helping me recruit more young women into my classes. The other thing I have to worry about is your environment. We can talk about this, but I used to have a bunch of posters of video games and, just things that really drew young guys, but not young women. So I made it a lot more friendly to young women. I now talk about problems such as community problems, educational problems, and how you can solve it through computing. And I also talk about storytelling with creating computer programs, and it really draws young women into these courses. Extend an invitation to all students. Don't have a preconception of what kind of student should go into a computer course. That's not a good idea. Just, if a kid expresses interest, encourage them. Tell them, hey, come on in. It's going to be great. You're going to do wonderful. You're going to learn a lot of really neat things. Encourage your current students that are creating great computing projects to, share those out. Have them go on, science and engineering fairs. Have them have a, computer science night. Invite the parents. The parents are really important. You got to reach out to them. I send out emails to our whole school population of parents via, our learning management systems. And you can also have your current students that take computer science classes to advocate for computer science in school events. Have them go out and help you recruit kids. But a real key is also your school site administrators and your counselors. Provide them information. Let them know why computing is so important. It's going to impact their kids' lives. We have to teach kids how to deal with computing devices every day. Now, here's some testimonials I'd like to share with you.
Can I have you go back one slide again? I want to kind of point out a couple things that I think really might be relevant to our work as we think about, we do have some folks who are listening to this and who are in the middle school, but a lot of them are at elementary school, so they are doing, these integrated computer science and computational thinking within their school day. But when we think about what are the strategies that we could use to really engage all kids, and at the end of this session, we're going to be really thinking about a student of possibility. Like, there might be a student in your class for whom you're thinking, I'm not sure they're totally hooked and totally engaged when we're using Scratch or doing something in code.org. So thinking about how can this encouragement of students to showcase their projects, to thinking about how to expand the types of creative computing, and Art mentioned that a little bit, like how do you, expand what you're doing to really pull in some kids. Also, this idea of he said here number 6 is really about reaching counselors, but how can we engage our administration, our principals, our assistant principals, our instructional coaches in the work that you're doing in your classroom so that there's a heightened awareness and importance around computer science and computational thinking. And also this idea of reaching parents and really helping, some parents do understand computer science and really want that for their students, but helping them, be a part of that advocacy and thinking about, well, gosh, how could we do have a diverse population here in Bellevue, so how can I be giving information to those families in maybe multiple languages and drawing them into maybe it's a class event or something that we can really showcase and help parents understand. So I wanted to take what you've done at the secondary level and think about what we know from strategies that have worked well when we are talking about changing the trajectory of underrepresented students in computer science and what that takes and what that means at the elementary level. Like, how can we take these strategies and translate that into our own work?
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. I'm working closely right now with a national school district, with an elementary school district, and they are challenged with the same things that you're describing, Sherry. And what I talk to them is about maybe think about a different paradigm shift and just talk to parents about, a lot of the parents can get intimidated, at least the ones that I work with, because they may not have a lot of computing experience, but they know that computers are important. And you just try to explain to them, well, wouldn't it be cool if we start teaching your kids about how to think computationally, because it teaches kids how to analyze, how to problem solve, how to, what a really big deal with computing is being able to communicate. You have to be able to communicate your ideas really clearly and concisely with people around you. And the way I teach computer science is all about collaboration. So you're learning all of these skill sets that are just critical for the workforce and or for future academic or academia pursuits.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Great. Perfect.
Would you like me to continue?
Sure. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah? Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share some things with all of you about some of the things my kids actually say when they finish taking computer science courses. The best thing about computer principles class is being able to communicate with others, being able to share your ideas freely. I learned to help others, and I'm now a better problem solver than before. Before I took this class, I was shy, very selfish, but now I like to help people who ask me for help, and I'm now more efficient in other classes. That computers are picky, the value of abstraction, how you have to recheck everything and find the mistake of the code. My personal favorite is the kid that said everything. That was really cool, The kid loved everything about it. But I'll tell you right now, what's empowering for kids is when I explain to them, and this goes from all grade levels, elementary school, middle school, high school, is I'm very upfront with the kids, says, you know what, I'm going to learn from you as much as you're going to learn from me, because they have done things in computing that I have no idea about. And I like to explain to people that I at first was full of trepidation, and I was a little bit intimidated because I don't have a background of CS, but I found out that that was actually a big plus in that I was able to share the experiences that my kids were going through. I was learning right along with them, and they found out that, you know what, it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. You're not going to get it. Computer science is built on failure, and it's just about getting trying to resolve the issues or the problems when you're doing computing. One thing that I will, that I think this is really a slide that I threw in there when I was doing the White House presentation, is that there was an important investment made in teacher training, and I think that's what Sherry is doing right now. But Sherry, I don't know if you know this, but I think there are grants out there that provide, professional development opportunities for teachers at all grade levels.
And also, I want to go to the point where you said about how, and that was one of the questions I was thinking of asking you, was really this, your background, you do not have a background in computer science, but this message to us around, because we're really starting this work of computer science and integrating integrating computational thinking. So, and it's okay at this juncture to really have that dissonance of being uncomfortable with this this new subject, especially as elementary school teachers and even our middle school teachers who are really pioneering this integration into core subject areas, into social studies, into our core math and core science classes. So I think that's something that we have to network and learn from each other on how that's going, because I think really to take excellent classroom teachers, we can learn how to do this, and I think that's an important message. Yeah,
absolutely. You're going to fail in front of your kids, and that's a good thing. Because you're going to model for them how you survive the failure with them. And a lot of my kids actually help me out when I get something wrong. I go, oh, you know what? I'm not sure about this. All of a sudden it starts a great class discussion on how to solve it, and it turns out to be fun. Yeah. So those are like personal experiences I've gone through, and I think it's been really great. And but here is, I was just going to show how it was. And I think you already taking the steps to go forward and have your district be very successful, Jerry. You guys you're spending a lot on professional development, and that really helps a lot in fostering we did training workshops for 50 teachers for both the high and middle schools, and right now I'm looking at training the elementary school teachers, and I think there's being able to build a professional learning community really goes, to helping foster computer science education in your district. These are courses that we've taught in our schools. We have the new AP Computer Science Principles course in high school, AP Computer Science A. The Principles course is more about understanding the 7 big ideas of computing. It's a really exciting class. I've taught it for 5 years. AP CSP is based on Java, and that's where kids start learning about syntactically challenging languages, which can be very, very frustrating for English language learners. Hence the reason I think drag and drop block programming languages are so much better. We use Alice, pencilcode.net. You guys are familiar with Scratch, and these are all wonderful programs for making it easier for kids to understand how to learn about computing and computational thinking. And then there's Exploring Computer Science, which is also similar to the Computer Science Principles course in exposing kids to different aspects of computing. And it's more of an introductory course, which is really cool. There's a lot of communities that you guys are involved with. The CS10K community has now evolved to be CS for All Teachers community. You can join online. They're a wonderful community full of great ideas. We use these different programming platforms for a middle school course: Google CS First, Harvey College MyCS, and ThoughtStem, learn to mod with Minecraft. But we're now expanded. There's Tinker Curriculum. Code.org is coming up with some really great stuff as well. There's a lot of resources out there for you to look at and try to figure out which ones would best fit our audience. The bottom line, I think, and this is what I really try to get across to everyone that I talk to across the country, is that computer science courses teach students how to think. It really does. It has kids think about being analytical, about being problem solvers, how to work collaboratively, how to communicate with one another, how to be creative. I think the linchpin for all computer science courses is the aspect of having kids become creative and think of ideas on their own. They think for themselves. So it's fun and enjoyable. They learn computing, computational thinking, and there's the list of skills that I've outlined, including organizational, because a lot of them don't realize how important that is. A real key aspect of being successful with these types of programs is the importance of administrative support at all levels of the systems, and I think your district, Sherry, is certainly displaying that. And again, if you'd like to reach out and contact me, there's my email address, arthur.lopez@sweetwaterschools.org.
We had some teachers responding to this idea of they're around the topic of engaging parents and thinking about shifting our traditional science nights or some of the family engagement activities that we have, shifting them to be more about computer science, about computational thinking, and including things like coding projects, 3D printing, robotics, those kinds of things. So, and then also another mention for, doing a coding night with families, getting parents involved right alongside their kids with being, computational thinking and computing. And I think the more we can advocate, and I said this in the chat window, but the more we can advocate for our parents to understand how important computer science is, the more that we can have everybody advocate for the funding that needs to come from the state and national level, both for research in this area, but also to support teachers. And this is the main thing. I mean, we have a lot of curriculum resources, things that are coming online, I swear, on a daily basis. But when we think about where is the need, we need to advocate and have our parents and our community advocate for CS education and the importance of that, so that we can really keep on this trajectory. And when we think about computer science for all, what that means and what it'll take, and it's really about supporting teachers. So I do have I wanted to ask you, Art, as we think about our application into our own classrooms, and on this journey, I think we're constantly trying to pick up strategies, right? Like strategies to engage kids in computing and problem solving. What strategies would you say, like the top 2 things you use in your classroom really to engage kids in computing and problem solving?
I think what I really try to do is develop and foster a learning community within the classroom. People continually say it, but how do you actually do it are 2 different kinds of things. And what I think is that, at least for my experience in my classroom, I really focus in on pair programming from day one. I want kids to be able to share and collaborate, talk to each other, without the sense of them having to feel so much pressure that they want to just cheat and copy straight out from each other. And it's a really delicate balance, but the more you empower children, I think anyways, to really think about, well, go in and ask each other questions, but don't write the same exact thing, or don't just copy from each other. Really learn from each other. And I found when I really profess that, and I don't make it a huge deal, when they get, when they catch them copying stuff, I used to, oh, come on, really? You need somebody to think for you? Don't you want to be able to solve the problem yourself? And when I make it really low key and on that aspect, there is consequences, certainly, but I really try not to hammer it away. I try to make the focal point on seeing what's the positive aspects of learning from each other. How do you help each other out? How do you actually, talk to and explain to each other how to solve a problem? So I have kids that are really, really advanced in computing, and I have kids that can they barely know how to use a mouse. And I try not to put those 2 groups of kids together, because the one kid that really knows and the other kid that doesn't know will dominate, and the other kid will be intimidated and they'll never learn. You have to be aware of the different abilities of the kids, their skill sets in terms of where they're at in computing. And I really try to engage kids that are barely starting with computing, with kids that sort of understand computing, and then I try to get the kids that really get computing to help each other out more so. But at a certain point, I just let them go, and they all just really start helping each other. Mm-hmm. And I try to foster a group, a sense of, hey, thanks, make sure you thank your partners for explaining stuff to you, And I try to explain to kids, to teach is to learn. And and I think that's an old Chinese mm-hmm. proverb. And I tell the kids, the more you teach each other, the more you actually learn. You have a deeper understanding of what you're trying to think about. Mm-hmm. And I really try to foster creativity. And that's not easy to do. You want to give small scaffolded problems in computing where you tell them, hey, let's think of a story, and I use Alice, which lends itself to storytelling. This would be different in a class that's going to be teaching syntactically driven languages, but I do know, like in the elementary school and middle schools, storytelling is really a great way to get kids to become creative, and I think that's a really great aspect of it. If you're doing like advanced courses in the high school, and you can think about data and information, and there's this new, it's not a new field, but data science is super hot right now, and you can have kids look at how they can collect data with it. Like we're doing a project right now with my kids where they're picking up and they're trying to collect data on the interest of the kids and their grades. And then we're separating by gender, by grade level, culture. And I'm asking them all kinds of questions, and it's really great to see them do research, and then they're creating programs on how to, sift through and gain that information, So I think really fostering creativity and really fostering professional learning communities, especially pair programming, really, really goes a long way in these kinds of classes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I wanted to have one more, have an opportunity while you're with us to ask one more question, and it's really around thinking about inherent biases, what inherent biases do you think exist around technology and computer science? And then how do we address those?
Well, how I do this with my kids. I'll ask them to. This is hard to do, but you have to take like snapshots, take pictures of your kids, just any kids, but if you know the kids are going to take your class and be in your classroom, see if you can get pictures of them, because that's even more empowering. But I get this slideshow and put a bunch of pictures of my kids on there, and I'll ask the kids, okay, will you guys, everybody close their eyes, and I'm gonna ask you to imagine what you think this person looks like based upon what I'm going to say. Okay. So I'm thinking about a computer scientist. What comes to your mind? Inadvertently, I've done this for 5 years. 80 to 90% of my kids will say a white male with thick glasses that's been working on a cubicle, and I really think that's like, oh, come on, really? For the kids, because I'm like, not everybody wears thick glasses anymore. Some of these kids come up with these things because I think they see cartoons or something. I don't know. But I said, really, and then I tell them, well, you know what I picture as a computer scientist? And I'll screenshot and show pictures of the kids. And it's amazing the simplicity of that. But the fact that you believe in them and their capabilities of, if they want to study computer science, they can, And that, and a lot of the kids have no idea what computing or computational thinking is about. They don't understand what's entailed. And I tell them, well, the whole thing about computer science is about solving problems with computers, whatever that problem may be. And it's really vast, and I tell them the deal is that you have to be really creative. Now, and I'll use the examples of Facebook, use social media is a great avenue for kids to relate to how computers science can solve problems, and it solved the ability of being able to communicate with their peers, Instagram, Snapchat, and then we talk about, the things they love about computing, video games, obviously, but they also love Pixar, and computer animated movies, and then we start talking about education. How does that help computers, people with computing? Let's think of really poor places in the world that don't have much. How about you stick like a few computers in there with educational programs? Would that help people out, And solving the world's challenges is something that I point out with kids too.
Yeah.
So
I think what you said around that exercise of close your eyes and what do you think of when you think of a computer scientist or computer programmer? What describe that person? And I think that's a great exercise for us to do as teachers, right? Because I think that's exactly what we would think. That's probably the first image, right? The Bill Gates, right? The Mark Zuckerberg, those guys, like, that's what they look like. And I also think that's the point and the message that we need to think about. What are we presenting kids with starting in kindergarten about who's a computer scientist, what do they do, and how it's about solving problems in the world through the use of technology, like you described, and putting them in a position to think about that as themselves. And I think there's lots of great examples. I mean, you can Google, kids who have created apps or creating solutions to, problems that they see in their world. And these are 9, 10, 11, 12, up through 16, 17-year-old kids. So putting in front of them, kids who are being inventors or kids who are creating solutions, changing the narrative that is just ever present in our culture, quite frankly.
You know where is a great website for this, Cherry, that has wonderful ideas? The National Center for Women in Information Technology, NCWIT. They have an incredible catalog of different strategies, techniques, tips, tricks to go ahead and engage young women and ethnically diverse students into STEM fields, computing along with science, technology, engineering, and math. And they're pretty amazing. I use their stuff all the time, you know. And if you can get from the universities, this is where I think you draw in your higher education your higher education programs. They usually have clubs, you know, like they have young women that are into computing, young women computing, you know. They have, you know, other aspects of that. And have young people that are, you know, that are young women, maybe ethnically diverse, that are pursuing these kinds of degrees, come in and talk to the kids. And they have a different perspective of who might be engaged and wanting to, you know, study this in the future, you know. And I think that's pretty empowering, you know. You know, you guys have it so that you can have kids that are taking CS courses in your high schools come and talk down to the little kids. Talk to them about how, you know, how computing is changing their lives. Why are they so interested? My high school kids, I'm involved in a community service program where 30 of my high school computer science kids right now are running coding clubs at 10 different elementary schools. The little kids love them. I'm going to have like, and the teachers are really grateful because those kids really understand computing and they can come in and help elementary school teachers think of ideas that might be engaging for young kids that want to learn about it as well, you know.
Well, and I think that's something that's more reachable, right, to kids, at least at the elementary and middle school. If they see a high school, you know, we talk about college and career, but that to an elementary student is so esoteric and like so far-fetched, right? But when you think about, they could say, oh, I get high school? Oh, yeah, that's the school I'm going to go to. Oh, I could take those classes. I think that's very, very important and a great message for us as a takeaway to think about how we're going to engage and motivate and start early on this trajectory for our kids.
Yeah, and you know, one thing I'd like to say, Sherry, you know, I didn't get into this because I'm interested in creating a legion of computer scientists. I certainly want to expose it. And to me, it's about exposure and providing opportunities to all children. These fields, because they arguably lead to our highest paying jobs, and they're important in all their aspects. But I think what's really important about computer science courses is that, you know, we understand how important computing is going to be in our kids' future. That's what's, I think, the message, you know, is that, hey, you know, guys, you're going to have to use a tablet, a phone, a laptop, the rest of your lives, and you're going to be engaged in it no matter what field you're going to go into. I mean, I would challenge anyone to think of any field that does not utilize computing or computational thinking in one form or an aspect, you know. So I've come to the conclusion, at least from my own personal self, and there's many of my colleagues that are across the country that feel the same way, that we think computing is just as important for kids as it is to learn how to read, write, and do math.
Yes. With that, that's a fantastic kind of summary statement of why we're doing the work and why we're all engaged in this conversation today. I'd like to turn this over to have a quick conversation about the K12 CS Framework. So I'm going to present my desktop really quickly. So, and also before we move into this next segment, I just wanted to say thank you, Art, so much for joining us today. We're very inspired by your work, and certainly it's important for us to hear from educator who, you know, is teaching kids at that high school level and thinking about what are we doing in this K-8 space to prepare our kids to be successful, to be able to take the courses that you teach, and also to help us think about engagement and equity and why this all matters, and also just kind of this idea of inspiration, right? You know, when we're charting new territory, and to think about how we can learn and connect and be inspired by others. So thank you so much for your expertise and being with us today. And we'll just spend a few minutes on this last little part, but just wanted to say thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm very honored and privileged. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah. So as we go into this next part, I just wanted to have a few minutes for the folks on the call to take a look at the K12 CS Framework as we think about what's happened in 2016 that's really influential in our work. And one of those things is the K12 CS Framework. So this framework is a baseline. It's an essential set of computer science concepts and practices. And the focus of this framework really is to illuminate powerful ideas in K12 computer science. And each of the core concepts are delineated with expectations at 4 different grade band endpoints, so grades 2, 5, 8, and 12. And this framework broadly delineates the concepts students should know and the practices that students should exhibit. So, and some of those Art talked about today. But it doesn't provide the level of detail that grade by grade standards or course objectives or descriptions or lesson plans, but instead it serves as a comprehensive guide for the development of standards, curriculum, assessments, teacher education, and extracurricular programs. So the framework is not a set of standards, but what it does is it really gives us guidance in how states may use the framework to develop standards that will combine concepts and practices into performance expectations that are clear, specific, and measurable. So I want to bring your attention to, and those of you that are on the call, you could hop over to the site, which is K12CS.org. And on the, if you click on Vision, on the left-hand side here, about in the middle of the screen, and go down to computational thinking. So vision, computational thinking. And if you scroll to distinguishing computational thinking, I'd like us to read, and you can either pull it up on your own computer, or I'm not sure if it's too small for you both to read on my computer, but or my screen here that you're seeing. But if we can just spend about a minute and a half looking at these 2 paragraphs distinguishing computational thinking. Have you think about this next question, and I'll put it up on the next slide. Where do you see your entry point in integrating computational thinking? So in that excerpt that we just read, it draws out designing algorithms, decomposing problems, and modeling phenomena. So thinking about your classroom, where you are right now, this journey of integrating computational thinking, what are some, what's your entry point, or what are you thinking about as far as either maybe one of those or all of those? Some of the ways, and very creative ways, that all of you are really thinking about how, mainly around this idea of decomposing problems and modeling phenomenon, both in science and social studies. And this idea of decomposing problems really can be across all content areas. It's come up as far as even problem solving when kids are maybe having disagreements with one another, or within this context of social emotional learning. So I think this is really a powerful conversation to continue to have and capture these ideas. And like I think Jenny said, wow, I could really be more explicit about that connection, right? So as we deepen our understanding of computational thinking, really trying to be mindful as we're thinking about those lessons and where is that intersection, that I can draw it out and be very explicit. So I think that's a great conversation to continue and be mindful, right? It's like all about this mindful teaching as we're doing a lot of these things, but making it very transparent to kids. So I wanted to have us look at one more section in the, as we're closing in on our time here, one more thing on in the K12 CS framework. So if you go up to vision, and I know it's a little cut off on my screen, but if you go to the third one down, equity in computer science education, if you scroll down, there's some, the bright side. I wanted to do a little highlight of this part here called the bright side. And three key points here. One is, and Art mentioned this as well, like computer science, and many Americans believe that computer science is as important to learn as reading, writing, and math. It really is becoming the skills, one of the core skills for the future. Additionally, Google has polled and done a study on what parents want, and parents really want their child's school overwhelmingly to offer computer science. This last point, I think, speaks to Art's work and also thinking about why it's important. We talk about these AP computer science courses and, as our capstone course, and why is it important for kids to be able to be successful in that course. And it's because students who take AP computer science in high school are 6 times more likely to major in computer science than those who did not. Females are 10 times more likely, and African American students 7 times, and Hispanic students are 8 times more likely. So just by taking the AP computer science course, it sets kids on a trajectory to be successful in computer science beyond high school. So I think that's really important for us to remember. It's like, okay, so why is this, what are we doing? What's our role in this K-8 space in setting kids on that trajectory? Because it really matters, especially for girls and students of color. So if we scroll down in this section down to, I wanted to bring your attention to this part here of efforts to increase access and opportunity. And I wanted to think about, like, as teachers, we are always evolving in how we engage our students in meaningful learning, especially in computer science. So, for example, it might be, gosh, I really have this student in my class that my goal for them is to have, stronger collaboration skills with peers. Maybe that's going to start with successful pair programming, and I'm going to intentionally scaffold or set things up for that student to be successful. Maybe it's you have a goal for a student to really be able to communicate about their learning, like communicate how they are creating algorithms and what that algorithm is. Maybe it's you really have a student in your classroom that you want to have, for them to have access to be able to do what their peers are doing. So for example, whether it's you have a visually impaired student, or we had one of our schools where the coach and a teacher developed Braille blocks so that the student could be engaged right alongside peers. Maybe it's the use of a peer coach for a student who needs greater access, physical access, to be involved with computing. Maybe you have a student that you think, wow, I don't know if they're too excited about this. When we do coding or, computer science, maybe they're kind of a little more on the ho-hum end of things, and you're just not sure about the engagement level there. Thinking about how are you going to stretch that relevancy piece for those students. Maybe it's, okay, I've got to mix it up and provide more of an open-ended project, maybe something with creative computing, or what's going to really draw them in. So as we think about what is, our work and the call that we have, and call to action here that's put forth by the frameworks, the K12 computer science frameworks, I want us to think about a student of possibility in your classroom. Think of one student, and what might be your intentional action plan for that student so they can be engaged and successful in computer science and computational thinking. Because I know, we're always refining our craft as teachers, right? We've never quite reached all. We've never quite had, we're not 100% satisfied at at any given day. But think about, what's that one student that you want to think about to really engage them. And let's share out some of those ideas. You don't necessarily have to share the student's name or anything like that, but what are some of the things you're going to do? In closing, I know we're just a couple minutes over our time, but I just wanted to say thank you for joining us in this online session. And this is made possible by our grant, our CS Education grant from OSPI, and our collaborative grant with Bellevue School District and Seattle Public Schools. So thank you for joining us this evening. And again, thank you, Art, for joining us. We really appreciate your insights and advice and sharing your learning and, of course, your inspiration. So we really appreciate that, and thank you everyone for offering up your ideas and suggestions and really being creative and thinking about how we're going to extend computational thinking in our classrooms and integrate, and also how are we really reaching all students. So when we say CS for all, what does that mean, all, in our classrooms, and really thinking deeply about what that means.